What's going on, everybody? We're back again with some more Phantom Parade content. Sorry we did miss yesterday. Forgot it was election day. Kind of important to not be making Jujutsu Kaisen videos for that. But we're going to be talking about some units other than Gojo to keep an eye out for on the official release of the global version. I know I've talked about Gojo ad nauseum, so everyone kind of knows, okay, Gojo's the best. Don't need to be told that again. So we're going to talk about some other characters and then maybe some memories as well that you want to keep a lookout for. So characters on release that I think are at least kind of decent. They don't have to be amazing, just kind of decent is Todo. Todo is pretty good. He increases his own and the ally behind him's damage. And then he gives the best friend buff to that person, so he's like a single support that you kind of line up right when your team order. So you'd put Todo in the front of this person, and then whoever you want him to buff behind him. When that ally is attacked, Todo will counter with Boogie Woogie, which can confuse them as well. The counter requires Curse Energy to activate, and will not activate if the person will not take damage. So it gives them a slight buff to physical damage, and then also will counterattack. It's not the most amazing thing ever, but it is pretty fun if you have the green Yuji. Yuji is just raw damage. He is Black Flash capable, obviously. That's like his whole bag for 90% of the series, so he is Black Flash capable. And he is just a big physical hitter. He can buff his own critical hit rate. He can also buff his Black Flash rate. And he increases his own ultimate gauge, so he can kind of recover his own ultimate with just an ability. And then his ultimate is the Black Flash, which is 3 hits. Those hits do not automatically Black Flash, so sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And each hit can Black Flash independently of one another. So those are two just decent units. I kind of mentioned them in the last video. They're kind of like a meme combination for people who really like Todo. You can get Todo and Yuji, that's completely fine. But Nobara, I did mention her in the other video, but she is still extremely good. She is Black Flash capable. She does Jujutsu damage, and she increases what's called the nail counter whenever she hits an enemy with nails. And then her ultimate essentially does more damage with the more nails you stack onto somebody, right? So the ultimate adds nails to the person, so it gives them 3 more nails. Then it does Jujutsu damage to the target that increases based on the number of nails that the target currently has stacked onto them. And then it does more damage based on that, and then when it removes all the nails from the target. So it like, you build up the nails, then you explode all the nails on the person to detonate them for big damage. So Nobara is your number 2 SSR target. We already kind of talked about that with Gojo. Nobara is the other one that you're going to want to get. But what I want to talk about, other than just the 4 SSR characters that I think are worth anything in the launch of the game, is SR characters, because there are some that are extremely good. The main ones being this guy right here, so Principal Yaga. He is a support character, and this skill 2 right here is crazy strong. So it buffs all allies damage for both Taijutsu and Jujutsu by whatever percentage. The percentage goes up as you level up the skill. As you can see, it goes all up to 45%. So he buffs just universal damage output. It does not matter if you choose to go with like a physical build with the Yuji Todo, or if you stick with the meta and you get Gojo Nobara, he can buff all of them, so you don't have to worry about that at all. And he does just have, regular damaging moves. Otherwise, you're really not going to be using those too much, because you're going to be using this skill 2 a lot, because you can actually stack this. You see they last for 4 turns, his buffs. So you're able to stack the buff a few times before it starts falling off to lead to some really high damage increases. He is extremely good. He is top tier. Despite being an SSR, I believe he's still top tier in the Japanese version right now. He's just that good. So honestly, because you don't have to reroll for SSR characters, I think that it is a decent idea if you're going to reroll at all, if you're not just going to start. So if you're going to reroll at all, I would reroll for this guy right here. He's just that good. And then we have, oh, okay, there we go. This guy right here, which is an SR version of Nanami. So he is Black Flash capable, doesn't really matter, because he also has a buff that is universal damage buff. So it's not as strong as Yaga's. Yaga's buff is better, but he has a buff that increases all allies' damage by, whatever percent. It just goes up based on the level of the skill. So he's a universal damage buffer, lasts for 4 turns, so he is able to stack that buff a few times as well, just like Yaga can. So if you have Yaga and this Nanami together, you end up with a really potent buffing combination where they're just adding a ton of multiplier to your 2 damage dealers in Nobara and Gojo. So you're building up huge damage really quickly. Highly recommend grabbing him as well if you can. He is an SR character, so it's not the most difficult thing ever to get him. It's still not super easy to do, but it's not the most difficult thing ever. Honorable mention to Shoko here. She is a healer. You don't really need a healer too much. She is one if you want one. Do you need one? Probably not, but it is interesting. She's like the only one that can really do that. And then you have this Momo, again, is a damage buffer. So she increases damage by 41% even at level 1. So she gives a much higher buff than anybody. So I think at 10, it has a 68% buff at 10, even higher than Yaga's buff at 10. The difference is that her buff only lasts for 1 usage, right? So if you remember, like we were talking about yesterday, buffs can last for turn duration or numbers of uses. So when a character attacks once, it is going to wipe out Momo's buff. So not as good as Nanami or Yaga because you can't stack that buff over time, but it is a big, potent buff. And especially with Nanami, like it's not a huge gap between the two of them. Yaga is much better. But if you get, Yaga and Momo instead of Yaga Nanami, perfectly fine to just run that instead. Nanami is not a massive upgrade. She is still quite good. Then you have Kaito. So Kaito is an original character to this game. He is not from the actual series. He is a defensive character. So he will increase or decrease, the selected characters like damage received, or he will be able to give a universal defense buff. So he can give attack nullification as well as a small buff. So that means that someone's going to hit them once. It's not going to work, so you see it stacks up to 2 times, so he can block things twice. And it also gives a small Jujutsu damage buff, so if you're running the Nobara Gojo core, he's quite good for that. The Demon Repelling Wall decreases Jujutsu damage received by however much, by leveling it up, for 3 turns, so that's not going to do anything to enemies that attack with physical damage, but for enemies that attack with Jujutsu damage, that is also a nice buff. His regular attack also decreases the enemy's damage by 15%. So the next time that enemy attacks, their damage will go down. And then his ultimate has a chance to stun. So stun is really good, especially in harder fights where enemies just go crazy. If you can stun them and make them skip a turn, that's pretty huge. Because it's tied to an ultimate, it's not the greatest stun ever because it is going to be gated by his ability to gain that ultimate gauge. But it is still a very potent ability to have. See if we can't find a list here of ours. It looks like we can't because there is a couple more characters that I wanted to talk about. Where is my search? There's search. Let's do Inumaki. Can we get a... Oh man, I don't know their names. That's SSR Inumaki. Is it you? Nope. That's Jujutsu Kaisen 01. Is it you? Nope. It's you. Okay, so this is an R-rarity unit. It's the equivalent of a 3-star. And it is Inumaki, and what he does is he has the Don't Move ability, which stuns the selected enemy, and it is a high chance to stun. It's a 95 chance to stun. Now, the way that stun works in this game is the more times that you stun a target, that target will become progressively more resistant to it, so you're not able to just loop stun forever. But the fact that this stun is on a 95% chance means that you are likely going to have multiple turns where you just completely lock the boss down and they can't do anything. So this guy really allows you to cheese out content that kind of outstats you. because you're able to just take multiple turns before the boss really gets a chance to do anything at all. If you're lucky, you can get your whole nuke combo out of the way before the boss even gets a chance to attack. So he is just an R-rarity character, very easy to get. I mean, it's the default, like the base rarity. Odds are you will come across one pretty early. Really, really good. So highly recommend investment in him with that stun rating. I don't believe it goes up. Oh, it does go up to 156.2%. So you level him up, you get that stun up all the way, and then you're even higher and higher chances of keeping that boss stun locked for as long as you possibly can. And then the only other R that I want to talk about is another version of Kaito. Which one is it? Not you. So then it must be this one. Yep. So this is the R, Kaito Yuki. Again, he is a original character of this game. He's not from the actual series. I believe you get this one just for playing. Like, I think he's just given to you because he's like one of the main characters. And he has this ability here, which is the Cursed Energy Support. So the way that attacks work, you might see over here on the side, there's this number and then the little Cursed Energy symbol. That's how much Cursed Energy it takes to cast this ability. So characters, whenever they use something that's not their basic attack, need to spend Cursed Energy in order to use that attack. So if you use your basic attack, you build Cursed Energy, and then you expend Cursed Energy on your abilities. Kaito gives a Cursed Energy regen to everybody except for himself, so he'll give it to everybody else, that allows them to essentially regenerate 10 Cursed Energy every turn in addition to whatever they regenerate on their own. So, you know, they get some from attacking and taking their turn and all that, and then they'll get an additional 10 for 2 turns thanks to his Cursed Energy support that allows you to keep funneling out big hits. It's not like the greatest support ability in the world. The damage ones obviously will do more damage over time, especially when you have really built characters. But when you're operating with characters who may not have that full nuking setup yet, like, you know, the Nobara into Gojo major damage combination, you're using stuff that's a little bit less optimal, or your skills are low level, so you need to use a lot of skills before you can really hit that huge ultimate damage. You know, you're cleaning through the riffraff before you get to the boss at the end of the level. Cursed Energy Support can do a really good job of keeping you primed, locked, and loaded, ready to keep going into more and more enemies before you get to the final boss. So there are R units in this game that are very good. There are SR units in this game that are very good. I would rather have these 2 Rs and the SRs that I showed you in here than most of the launch SSRs, right? Like Panda, Inumaki, I don't want them. I want these SRs and Rs that are really good. That's my take on it. Now I want to talk a little bit about support memories as well, or I guess recollection bits, as they're being called in the global version. So I already talked about the ones that I think are very important. You have your non-standard, you have your Jogo's Domain, whatever it's called, Pride, sure. And then you have your Unity from top to bottom right here. These are really, really good ones. I think if you get an account that starts with Unity from top to bottom and non-standard somehow, you know, if you manage to get both of those, that is an insane start. You are good to go. But there are several other memories that happen to be pretty good that I want to touch on just really quick. You have this one here, which is Adult Time. This increases your own damage dealt by 70%. So it is universal. So it's not based on Jujutsu damage or physical damage. It is just damage dealt. So this one is pretty good if you don't have one of the others. And if you don't have non-standard, this is just 10% weaker. And it also has the added effect of being able to go on anyone. So that's a little bit of a buff there that you can be kind of universal with it. We also have the Nameless Youth one here. So this is a physical buff one. So this is for your melee attackers. You know, your Yuji right now is going to be the big one. So if you decide to go with like the Yuji Todo build, you'd be using this. It increases your taijutsu damage, which is just physical damage. That's just what they call it, by 70% for 1 turn. And then if your health is below 50% when you use it, you get an additional 30%. So you get a lot of damage from this, especially if your health is low. So Yuji can really pump up some big numbers. This one here, the Like-Minded Sisters, the Maki and Mai one, this is exactly the same as non-standard, but it is for physical attackers instead of Jujutsu attackers. It's not super great because of that, just because physical is so much worse than Jujutsu, and especially at the launch of the game. By the time, Toji comes around, you can probably get your hands on this just by happenstance of just rolling. So it's not something that I would focus on super hard unless you are fully committed to the Yuji Todo combination. You really want to use that, then you can go ahead and do that. Are there any other ones that really jump out? This one right here, this is a defensive one, so Mutual Trust. It's not super great, but if you want some defensive options, you have this. This decreases all the allies' damage received by 30%. So it will just kind of let you tank one big hit. A lot of these ones that you're looking at down lower here will not be out at the launch of the game. They will come out over time. So you're really kind of looking at this upper group right here. Gojo's Camp. This one is a 60% self buff, so similar to non-standard or adult time. Increases your own damage by 60%. The difference here is that I believe this one is a farmable one that will come out in events over time. It's not one that you need to pull. You also have a Wish from the Past here. This is a healing ability, so you can go ahead and heal. Recovers all allies' health by 30%. So if you are worried about your HP, or you just don't have the damage output to make up for being, not super tanky, you have this one to use as a healing option. For SR character memories, most of these are just going to be weaker versions of the one that you're looking for the SSR variant of it, right? So you have like this Nobara one here. This is a 60% increase to Jujutsu damage. So it's kind of like non-standard, but it's 20% weaker, right? So it's more or less the same thing, just less effective. So it is a perfectly fine stand-in if you need a stand-in over time. It's quite good. It's one of the better ones. There's also this one here. After school activities. This one recovers your own cursed energy a little bit. It just kind of gives you a little bump to cursed energy. So if you are in a position where you're using like a supporter character and you don't want their support ability to run out of cursed energy before you're ready for it to, or before you no longer need it, I guess I should say, you can go ahead and do after school activities and just bump up your cursed energy a little bit. A lot of these are not very good. A lot of these can be good. It really depends on what you're using. Most SR ones are just weaker versions of an SSR alternative, unless you're talking about, stuff like after school activities that gives you that little cursed energy boost. So these are things that you really want to keep an eye out for. The most important things when you're starting a new account, especially because we're getting Gojo and Nobara for free, so you don't have to worry about that. If you're going to reroll, I would either target Yaga and Nanami, right? So you could go for these guys. Or I would target non-standard, which is this one. You see my little mouse right here? It's the hollow purple. Or the Yuji and Nanami inside Jogo's domain. Unity from top to bottom. I would target either of these two. So Unity from top to bottom is going to be really useful for your nuker-like accounts. Stuff that's going to try to do massive damage with Nobara and eventually Yuta and Gojo. That's what this one's going to be really good for, because it's going to let you get your ultimate faster. And then you have non-standard, which is just your huge damage output. So you can either reroll for the memory and then get Gojo and Nobara that way, or you can aim for the SSR character, or the SR characters. In an ideal world, you get a reroll that has all three, so it has non-standard and these two, or it has Unity from top to bottom and these two. Realistically, probably not going to happen, right? So if you have to prioritize it, I would prioritize Yaga over anything else, and then you can just get non-standard over time. You can get Unity from top to bottom over time. Memories are easier to get than characters. SR characters are easier to get than SSR memories, but memories, not only are they easier to get than characters, but there are a lot of cheaper, not that much worse alternatives. Consider them like, light cones in Honkai Star Rail, weapons in Genshin Impact. You're looking at a buff to a character as opposed to actually getting a major character. So More than anything, I prioritize this Yaga right here. Then after him, if you really want to be the kind of sick weirdo, the absolute freakazoid that rerolls until you get 2 good things, then I would go for non-standard, and I would go for Yaga. If you get Unity from top to bottom as well, awesome. If you get Nanami here as well, awesome. Not as high a priority as getting Yaga, and then also non-standard. That is my recommendation. So, hope this was helpful. Next time you guys see me, which will probably be tomorrow, we'll be in the game. We'll be talking about Satoru Gojo, and we'll be talking about team flow. So I'm going to be going into a little bit of how you want to order your team, how you want to play your team, especially if you use a nuking build. I am not planning to invest much, if any, money into this game, just because the pity is so bad. If the pity was more reasonable, I probably would, but the pity is so bad, don't expect me to be doing that. I'm going to be using the meta team that I recommend everybody else uses as well. So I'll be using the same thing I'm telling you guys to use. You know, I'm not going to be giving you guys bad advice and not following through on it. What the team that I am going to be telling you all to invest in over time, the characters I will be telling you to pull for, are the same characters that I will be pulling for, the same units that I will be using. So we'll talk a little bit about how to use the Nuker team tomorrow. We'll talk about Satoru Gojo in more detail. We'll talk about Nobara a little bit in more detail. And we'll kind of talk about how the team works, right? So we'll go through how to use it, when to do the skills, the order that you want to put the team in, all that good stuff. And I will see you there tomorrow for the official release. Looking forward to it. I hope you are too.